Welcome to Real World, Real Talk with Dr. D.Z. Cofield. The show represents captivating conversations and insightful information to encourage and inspire you with all you need to become the best you can possibly be. And now, your host for Real World, Real Talk, Dr. D.Z. Cofield.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. D.Z. Cofield, and you're listening to your member-supported public radio station, your number one public radio station in the world. That's right. I declared it. KTSU 90.9 on the FM dial and KTSUradio.com. And you are listening and watching on the Real World, Real Talk podcast network. Well, it has been quite a week. And man, the top story that has hit us at the time of this recording is the president and his wife testing positive for COVID-19. Over 208,000 people have died of the coronavirus in our country. There are many who have been parroting the words of the president all the way from "it's a hoax" to "it is just going to magically disappear. It's not going to affect us." And we have the president missing calls and meetings and the like because he has tested positive for COVID-19. And while we certainly are praying for his recovery and the recovery of First Lady Melania Trump and the safety of Barron and their family, it is somewhat ironic. Let's be honest. It's ironic that everything that he has done to downplay this virus, to see him now contract the virus and to be ravaged by the effects of it. And, you know, typically you're hearing doctors say things like, once you experience the symptoms initially, it gets worse before it gets better. And so the president's health will be charted over the next several days to see how he's doing and if he is, in fact, getting better and will get on the mend. But there are several things that are in play coming up soon, not to mention the remaining presidential debate. Speaking of the presidential debate, that has seemingly been pushed off of the table with the news that the president has contracted COVID-19. But the debate was a debacle, to say the least. If you're like many people, you tuned in to watch it and then just was exasperated and frustrated by everything that took place. Want to encourage you, don't forget to register to vote. It is not too late. Actually, the last day that you can register to vote in this upcoming election on November the 3rd is October the 5th. That's Monday. That's tomorrow. So if you have not registered to vote, we need you to do that. It doesn't matter where you're voting or for whom you're voting. You just need to register to vote. Do that at vote.gov. That's vote.gov. And you can get registered to vote. Tonight, we continue our series, Effectively Educating Our Children During the Pandemic. And as you know, there were declarations that were made as schools got started around the country, and different schools were looking at different strategies to educate our children to ensure that student outcomes were met during this pandemic. Some of those declarations, some of those plans have been changing and adjusting as we're moving out of the first 6 weeks and into the second 6-week part of this school year. There are many who are trying to figure out, man, what is working, what is not working. But at the end of the day, we know the key is the health and well-being of our teachers and our children. And so tonight we have a guest coming in to help us think through and talk about. And really tonight, I want tonight's show to be an encouragement to our teachers and our parents and our children, because anytime you go into something new, you know, you always hear talk about a learning curve, and this learning curve in terms of how to educate our children on the digital platform is a learning curve that is more like a learning mountain. I mean, it's like climbing up a sheer cliff. I mean, this has really, really been challenging with all of the emotional and mental and physical tolls that COVID-19 has taken on us. And there are expectations of children that, quite honestly, I don't know if they can live up to those expectations and function under those guidelines, not the least of which is expecting children who are active and like to move and need to move around, expecting those children to just sit and learn. So we'll talk about that on tonight. Let me take care of a couple of housekeeping matters before we go any further. If you'd like to follow me during the week, you can follow me on Instagram at DZ Cofield. You can also follow me on Twitter at DZ Cofield. You can follow me on Facebook at DZ Cofield. And you can also follow me on all social media platforms at RWRTDZ. RWRTDZ. That's Real World, Real Talk, DZ. Let's get to our show. I am so happy to welcome to Real World, Real Talk our guest today, and that's none other than Mr. Terence Johnson. Now, you know, there's people that you know of and you've heard about, and man, Terence is without question like one of the heroes for my wife. I've heard his name so much, I feel like I know him already. He is the CEO of Caliber Public Schools, located in the East Bay section of Northern California. Prior to joining the Caliber team, Terence served as the Director of Strategic Sources at KIPP Houston Public Schools. He also served as Interim Executive Director and Chief of Schools at KIPP Memphis in Memphis, Tennessee, where he oversaw 8 schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. We are so excited to have him with us. He has a multiplicity of years of experience in education, including as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal in Colorado, in Texas, and in Memphis. Has some experiences in HISD as well. So I guess we can kind of welcome him back to Houston and welcome him back to Texas, even though he's out in the Bay Area. Come on, let's take this opportunity to welcome to Real World, Real Talk, none other than Mr. Terence Johnson. Mr. Terence Johnson, let me give you some applause, brother.
Amen.
Man, how are you doing, brother?
Man, I am good, man. And thank you for the great introduction, man. And I will say this, Houston is always going to be my home, man. I am here. Houston's near and dear to my heart. I raised my family in Houston.
Oh, man. Now, let me see. Was it Bastion that you taught at?
I was at the lab school, TSU lab school, and I was at Bastion. I was the principal at both of those places. Yeah.
So you did some time, man. You understand what it means to serve in underserved communities.
Man, listen, I was at Cooney Holmes, TSU lab school, 100% African American, 100% free and reduced lunch, 100% our people, man. And I will say this right here, and I mean it. That was my best experience ever, man. I love that.
Yeah. Wow. That's tremendous. So you're out in Caliper, the Caliper schools out in Northern California. So first, give us an update, man, on how you're doing with the storms that are out there, the firestorms. I have friends that are out there, and man, the pictures are unbelievable. You know, you're not able to see the sky. You're not able to see the Golden Gate Bridge. So talk about what's happening out there.
Yeah. Thank you for asking, Doc. So what I will say is, first and foremost, like, it's bad. It is historic. More fires than we've ever seen out here. And, I've only been here 14 months, but it's bad. Yesterday, the sun did not come up. Well, it came up. We didn't get to see the sun yesterday. It was dark the entire day.
Wow.
And so with the smoke, you go outside, your car is full with ashes. So it's a historic time. It's a difficult time. But we'll weather through it.
So, Terence, let me ask you this, because I think there are a couple of things that people don't think about when they think about educating children. They think about classrooms and books and pencils and paper. but we don't always think about the social emotive side of teaching, and not only our children, but your teachers as well. How are your teachers and your administrators faring? Because, you know, we're expecting them to be supermen and superwomen to go into classrooms and do their jobs. And some of them are in danger of losing their homes if they haven't lost their homes and their personal possessions, along with COVID and everything else, man. How are you managing the emotional well-being of your teachers and your staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's pretty much across the board. And what I will say is this right here, like, and I'm paying very, very, very close attention to it. We did a survey for our staff recently, and the number one thing that they were worried about was their mental health. You know, we obviously require our teachers to do this synchronous learning with their students. And of course, many of them have their own children at home and have nowhere to take their children because of the coronavirus. And so managing their health and their mental health it's a challenge, and something that is front of mind for me always.
Yeah, I can just imagine, you know, I mean, we've seen teachers around the country who just succumbed to the pressure and just resigned and just said, you know, I'm out. I need to find another job, another career. I don't want to put my children in jeopardy. I don't want to put myself in jeopardy. I don't want to put my family in jeopardy. What have you all decided in terms of your educational model for COVID-19? Are you doing a hybrid? Are you in classes? Are you doing everything on a digital platform?
Yeah. So one thing I will say, I'll start with this right here, which you are aware, and maybe many of your listeners are aware. One thing that they don't do out here in California is really listen to the president. Like, California is its own beast, man. So and I mean that. Like, we went out March 13th. We were out distant learning. And you know, when he threatens money and threatens this and that, hey, you know, you have to, like, it's this noise to people out here in California. California is going to do what California does. And I think, and that was kind of new coming from Texas, coming out here, that California is going to march to its own beat. So with that being said, Doc, we are doing distant learning. We've been distant learning since March 13th. We have planned for distant learning, and we have a hybrid model, and then we have a all the way back, coming all the way back. So we planned for all three. And what we've been doing is monitoring, just like the status of our counties, you know, daily and weekly, to see when we're going to receive some students. And so we are doing distant learning. In another week, we will have some students come back on campus to do just like assessments and some testing, and they'll be coming back in very, very, very small groups.
You know, it's amazing you mentioned that, because there are some districts here that, for example, are doing map testing. And I know you're familiar with map testing, and they're trying to do map testing virtually. Yeah. And it's like, how can you do map testing virtually? And they're trying to explain to parents how to be administrators of the map test. Yeah. Some of them are trying to explain to Latino parents who don't speak English how to administer a test in English, and wondering why it's not being successful. It's so. Let me ask you this question, because I think, you know, for me, I have a phrase that I've adopted, that, you know, there always comes a time when you have to learn how to think without a box. Like, I don't want you to think with a box, because then when the pressure comes, you're going to run back to the box. You know, I'm like, let's get rid of the box. And this is a time when we are challenged, I think, more than any other time, to think creatively. Yeah. And people who can't think creatively and who cannot assess the situation that they find themselves in are going to have a tough road to hoe. I'm wondering, how did you approach this coming in, especially new to California, new to the district, and you get hit with arguably the most challenging time that educators have faced in this country in over 100 years. What was your process? What was your thoughts in terms of how do we approach this?
Yeah. Two things. First of all, I'll talk to, I'll speak to just like the way that I take care of myself and the way that I lead. And it was more of the Stockdale paradox, which is, you know what, this is bad. And, we're in the moment, and we're going to get through it at some point. And so understanding that you have to take it day by day, because you're receiving all this different news daily, weekly, monthly, and we're learning on the fly. I mean, we are building this thing on the fly. And so I refuse to take myself on this emotional roller coaster, because it's unhealthy for me. And so I try to lead that way, Doc, with our staff, knowing that the wind's blowing a different direction every day. But I try to stay steady. And then to the point that you opened up with, like, I'm really interested in helping our staff get through this too, and getting to the other side. So what does that mean? I went out, I wrote a grant. I got a big grant from one of our partners, Tipping Point, to help fund both a tier 1 mental health program and a tier 2 or individual therapy. I'm doing everything I can to help our teachers have mental health as a whole group, as small groups, and as individual needs. Also raise some money for both our teachers and our families that we call Caliber Cares, where, you know what, if you can't buy groceries or you can't buy medicine, the only thing you have to do is apply, and we give you a gift card for up to $200. And so we raise a bunch of money to do that as well. But those are like basic needs that our families need and our teachers need. And they also need to know that we care. So those are some of the things that we did. Cofield. One is, I know I need to stay steady if my workforce is going to be steady. And two, I need to pay attention, and we need to take care of our workforce. And so those are two things that I've tried to do as the CEO of Caliber Schools.
So you're staying virtual. People were kind of makeshifting it back in March. Okay, hey, we're scrambling. We're doing the best that we can. For whatever reason, I guess they believed the guy, at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and they thought that they wouldn't go back into school. It's interesting because, I was telling people in May, when they asked me, they said, "Man, Pastor, when are you going back into the sanctuary?" And I said, probably January 2021. If things go really, really well.
If they go really, really well.
Right. Maybe January, maybe Easter, we might start looking at 2022 in terms of just reopening as normal. Yeah. And, because my thing was, I'm not going to let politicians guide this process. I'm going to let the science, I'm going to let doctors guide this process.
That's right.
So you had some time to prepare. Was there a point where you said we might go back in, or were you pretty much convinced, no, we're going to stay digital until we get to the end of this, or at least see a light at the end of the tunnel?
This was my hope. Being that we're a charter network and much more nimble than a large school district, we were able to get hotspots and Chromebooks in every kid's hands within 2 days of going virtual. March 17th or 13th, which I think was a Friday, we got word. Monday, Tuesday, we passed out Chromebooks and hotspots, and learning started Wednesday of the next week, man. Like that's how quick we had it up and running. To your point, like we weren't schooled on platforms, best practices, or any of that. So we muscled our way through it. And then we planned for a hybrid model. And, so we know how to open up school with kids all back. We know how to do that. That's what we do. We planned for a hybrid model, and we planned for a virtual model. So we flushed out 2 plans. My hope was, that, if we did everything right, we could come back for in a hybrid. But knowing, leadership at the top, not having any type of national plan, I pretty much knew, out here in California anyway, like I knew we were going to be virtual. So, that our plans were real solid coming back.
You being experienced in teaching at-risk youth, underserved, underprivileged communities, you are as aware as anyone of the gaps, the disparities in educating our children, the lack of resources, et cetera. How have you worked to make sure, and what kind of counsel would you give to parents to really step up and push to make sure that the gap doesn't widen during this educational experience on the digital platform?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, Doc, and really, when somebody has it like all the way figured out, I hope they share it. But there's a couple of things that I think are really important, and you've mentioned them. But one, our kids are digital natives, meaning that's all they know is a digital world. Many of our parents are digital migrants, meaning they have migrated over to the digital world and are still afraid of the digital world. So first and foremost, I think one of the things, and we learned this the hard way as well, we have all these apps and platforms that we're doing this work on. The first thing that needs to be done is we need to have some type of parent university to school our parents on the certain platform so they can support their children. Like I said, like any, third grade through all the way through, like those kids, they got it. But your pre-K 2 students, parents need to have, a parent university. We need to teach our parents how to be efficient on these platforms. And then secondly, Doc, like, we're in this whole new world of conceptual math, and math is not done the way that you and I did math coming up. And so we have to teach our parents this new way of learning relative to math and how we're doing things, technology-wise and then conceptual-wise, on how to best support their students. And so that's from the school end. Relative to the parent end, I think it's incumbent upon parents to demand a couple things. One, that that schools support them in learning, so they can support their child. And then two, making sure that, and I heard you mention this at the top of the show, that the average attention span for an adult is 8 seconds, which made me laugh. But we have to demand that there are plenty of breaks in the day, and we have, and I understand the synchronous part of the learning, but there has to be asynchronous time for independent practice where kids can turn off the camera and do their thing independently. And so I would say parents have to demand more asynchronous time, because we're really pushing. I mean, I know that's an area that I have to improve, because we do have, in my opinion, and as the CEO, we have too many synchronous hours.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna roll it back.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's funny because after the first day of school, one of my granddaughters who just started her online journey and education, I mean, was passed out. You know, just she was just like mentally like just exhausted. And just as soon as they got off, you know, she was just like gone. And it was like, man, like what's happening? And we're not realizing how taxing that is. I love your analogy, though, that our children are digital natives and we're digital migrants. Yeah. And we're not making education fun and engaging on the digital platform. It's almost like, from what I've seen, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it, you know, it's like we're just trying to take the classroom and plop it on the digital platform. And we maybe it's because we're migrants, but we haven't thought through, you know, I talked to one of my sons, I talked to him about educating on the platform. And I said, how are you incentivizing these kids to get online? How, you know, I mean, do they get any points? Are you doing any booms, buyings, any, you know, light shows or anything online? I mean, what is it that the same things that would drive me to play a video game, to engage? What are some of the things that you're doing to engage these kids educationally? Hadn't even thought about it. I mean, you know, it's just like, you know, synchronistic, asynchronistic. Here's what we're doing. You know, let's start our tutorial programs. And I'm like, you got to get the kids online first. You got to get them engaged. How are you rethinking that as you're moving into this?
Yeah, those are really good questions. One of the things that we're thinking about is creating digital pods. And so, you know, what you know, Doc, like, you know, part of the learning experience of school is the socialization of children and them going on a journey of, you know, making sense of their identity and who they are. And so that's what's missing in this digital world is, you know, our kids having that social time and socialization and being able to make good decisions. Do I cut up with my classmate, or do I act straight? You know, the social pressures that kids are under all the time from their peers, like that's part of the learning experience of schools. And they're missing those components right now through relationships. And so what we've done is we've set up a couple of like learning pods digitally, and then also we've had parents set up, and we're in the hood, both here in Richmond and Vallejo, where parents have set up like learning pods where, you know, 6 kids show up at the park together on this certain day, and, you know, they're not intermixing with other kids, but, you know, these 6 kids or 5 kids or whatever they are, but we've set up that, what I want to call intentional play dates with our kids.
No, I think that's powerful. I think the idea of taking control of that. What did you all do, Mr. Johnson, around the digital academy for parents? Because I know there are a lot of parents who are feeling exasperated and overwhelmed, and there was really, even though the thought was and the consensus was that parents are going to become the primary enablers of their children on this digital platform, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about how to train parents and how to make them more comfortable on these platforms.
Yeah. So Doc, I'm glad we're talking about this, because truly, like, this was a learning on the fly. So, and it made me laugh because we talked about math. We learned through trial and error that Kinder 1, 2 can't do map testing digitally. Like, it just can't right off the bat. And parents are struggling supporting them. So we said, you know what? We're not going to do fall map. We're going to do winter to winter map. And we're going to bring our kids on campus for winter in small groups, and we're going to test them for winter map. But you know what? We're not even going to fight this battle right now. Through that, we found out that parents were struggling getting into their classrooms. And so our teachers, you know, who, in this space, or most often they're young, young folks. They, we just started setting up twice a week parent universities and teaching them the platforms that we were working on. So 45 minutes, virtual. This is how, this is this platform. This is how you navigate it. This is how you do it. And our tech people ran those virtual meetings with our parents. And we still have them going on, and we'll have them going on for probably the next couple of weeks as well. But that we didn't even think about that, Doc. We did not think about that. And we do it both in English and Spanish, and everything we do in English and Spanish. But we did like, it was trial and error. We were like, okay, we got a problem. Okay. Parents don't know how to navigate this. This is new to them too.
Right.
We're asking them to support their kids, and they can't. And so that's what we've been learning on the fly. And then what's important is that when you get this information, you do something with it. And I think that's crucial, in that, okay, it's not working. We see that parents are struggling with this. What are we going to do about it? And turning the problem into action. That's how we've responded to. So it's a lot of Doc learning on the fly, and being that, again, we're a charter network. We're pretty nimble to where we can make those adjustments.
So as you think about the children, and you think about the learning for you personally, what standard are you going to use to determine whether this digital platform educational experience is successful or not?
Yeah.
I think it's unfair.
Yeah.
I hear TEA, for example, saying, well, you're still going to be responsible for the STAR test.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, man, how to what you just said, how are you going to hold children and teachers accountable when everybody's learning on the fly? Like, nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's trying to figure this out as they go.
So I'll start by saying what we did learn, which was when we did give the STAR test to our K2, most of our kids came back in the top 90% relative to performance. Best scores we've ever had in the history of the network, meaning the parents helped them do the whole thing, or did it for them.
Gotcha.
So we threw all those scores out, right? So what we do have is this right here. We have a pretty sophisticated progress monitoring, mastery tracking of standards through Illuminate. And so we are tracking our standards, we're tracking proficiency, we're tracking mastery. We have small groups for reteach. At the end of each day, you can go either asynchronous or synchronous relative to office hours. All right. And so end of the day, let's say that the day ends at 2:30, 3 o'clock. A student can work on their homework or do their work, or they can join their teacher for extra help. And they get to make, unless the teacher taps them on the shoulder and says, you need to show up at 3 o'clock for it. We try to, the kids that are falling short of mastery, we're tapping the shoulder and asking them to stay later. That Doc starts for us next week, where we start our mastery tracking. So we haven't done mastery tracking. So I haven't asked for the mastery tracking. Next week, all of our schools would be mastery tracking. And so we'll know how our kids are tracking weekly, monthly, and there's a weekly progress report that goes out to the parents on the standards, on how their students are performing.
So I know everybody's struggling in the midst of this change, where have you seen the greatest struggle when you think about administrators, teachers?
Without a doubt. Yeah, and you said it at the top. You've got the pulse. Our teachers are carrying the burden, man. You know, you heard me to say it. Like next week, we got to start mastery tracking. Parents didn't learn it. We need to teach our parents how to, like, our teachers are, you know, they hear it from the parents, you know, they're sharing it with their administrators. Like our parents are, I mean, our teachers are like, they're the heroes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you said that without hesitation, that the, you know, the teachers are carrying the water. And, you know, one of the frustrations that you would hear is, among other things, teachers not only not feeling that they are being appreciated, but that they're not being heard, that no one is even asking their opinion. And all of these edicts are coming top down, you know, from people, some of whom have never been in the classroom or haven't been in the classroom since the year of our Lord, you know, and they're telling them, you know, they're going back to the 3 R's, you know, and they're missing. I mean, they just don't understand, you know, the age and era that these teachers are functioning in.
Yeah, Doc, what I will say is this right here about that comment that you just made. I like to think that I am really attuned, and I am very attuned, and I try to spend a lot of time like looking through the teacher's lens. And admittedly, I haven't taught a classroom since I was 27, even though I'm teaching all the time. It doesn't matter. Like they like, you know, and I'm being responsive to pretty much everything they're asking for. They're overworked, man. Like they are. Like it's a lot, man. It's a lot. And I would not be truthful if I said anything different. They start their mornings out in SEL groups, taking care of social and emotional needs of our kids. They're asked to run the play on the academic side. They're asked to progress monitor, and they're asked to, at the end of the day, the kids that aren't mastering it, to tutor them and get them up to speed. And then if parents don't have the technology, you know, help support our parents with that. There's so many things that they're doing while they have their own families at home. It's a lot. And I feel very fortunate to have the workforce that I have. And they are kicking up dirt. There's no question about it, Dr. Cofield. They let me know that it's a lot. And I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I was talking to one school leader who said the edict came down from the district that it's time to start the tutorial component of their educational plan, and the teacher said, "No, I am not going to add that." Like, we're still just trying to figure out how to get online.
Yeah.
How do you manage? Because I think there's a balance, and I was talking to my wife about it. You know, I think there's a balance between overreacting to something new and not giving time for the learning curve to play out versus, man, this is crazy, and I don't know how we're going to make it through this. You know, because a lot of people, when you're thrust into something new, you know, they quit before the learning curve has even had an opportunity to play itself out. But this is different. This is not just skill. You know, this environment is affecting our will as well. How do you help the teachers and the students and the parents and your administrators? I mean, how do you help them manage that?
It's a great question, and I'm going to tell you what I said last night in a principal's meeting. I acknowledged that my biggest worry, because I feel it myself, Doc. My biggest worry is being burnt out for my principals and burnout for my teachers. And so what I'm giving you permission to do is to be creative on each of your campuses and trying to find ways to renew yourselves and your staff. What that means, take it and run with it. Okay. But I'm giving you permission to try to help one another renew. So whether it's tapping out on certain afternoons and being offline, whatever it is, like, I'm giving them permission. And so, if they have a grade that goes asynchronous for an afternoon or whatever, like, do it, man. Have your third grade say, okay, this is the work for the afternoon, or that's the work for the day at noon, and kids and teachers like tap out for the afternoon. I want them to do stuff like that, just to help renew themselves. And relative to their emotional health, we're gonna bring resources into the school. We've already brought resources in for our children, but for our adults. But a lot of times it's just time, like turning off your computer and not answering any emails, starting at noon, and not worrying about anything until the next day. And so I want them to think creatively about how they're going to do that, and I want them to do it, and they won't be penalized by me. But I think it's important they do that.
So we hear about a third grade teacher who reports back to work, and after being diagnosed with COVID-19 for several days, succumbs to the disease. I've got to imagine that as a school leader, the two things that you don't want to hear are one of your staff members succumbing to COVID-19 or any of your children succumbing to COVID-19.
Yeah.
How have you balanced that and worked through this very trying, tense, anxiety-filled time for many teachers and many families regarding their children and teaching and all of those things? I know you're not doing in person right now, but the reality is still there.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So prior to making the decision to go virtual, as we were tracking up to our decision date, I went around the table of each one of our school leaders in a meeting and asked them how they were feeling about this decision of going possibly virtual and in a hybrid model. And to that point, Dr. Cofield, our school leaders felt the weight of the health of their staff and their parents and their children. And it was overwhelming, the weight that they felt. I was feeling the weight already as being the decider for the school district, right? But the weight that the principals felt was remarkable, man. So they feel that weight. I've had a couple of staff members, one assistant principal and one director of operations, I'll knock on wood, in my entire network, who have been infected. And it spooked both of those campuses where, because I think it happened giving out Chromebooks. So anyway, it is it's a challenge, man, and it's on the front of everybody's mind relative to catching the virus. And then, if you have family members who have underlying conditions in their homes, which all of us do, you're worried about how that might impact your families. But it's a huge weight on everybody, from school leaders to teachers with that.
You all are now managing, I think, arguably much more than you ever have in the history of your schools and educators across the country. I mean, I think any school district, any administrative leader who is not concerned about and in tune with the social emotive condition of his teachers and his staff is heading for disaster. You are very aware of it. Even though you have been in the classroom for several years, you're listening to your teachers, which I think your teachers have to appreciate. And many teachers are lamenting that they're not being heard. They're not even being asked how they're feeling. And I hate to ask this because I almost feel like I'm putting something else on your plate, but how are you helping parents? I know you're dealing with the digital piece as well. Yeah. Are you referring parents and what they're dealing with, whether it's single parents or parents who are unemployed, who are literally waiting on a stimulus check to pay back rent? I'm not sure if you have any of your students or their families who are being evicted or on the verge of being evicted, and people don't really think about how all of those things affect education as much, if not more, than who's in the classroom. If a child's hungry, if the lights are off, or et cetera. Are you facing those things yet? Have you faced those?
Absolutely. From the very beginning, mind you, Dr. Cofield. So that is one thing that I will say relative to being out here in the East Bay, 12 minutes, 15 minutes from San Francisco. When we went into our virtual world, we were able to raise over $200,000 like within the first month of going into the space, and so we created an account called Caliber Cares to take care of those very things that you're talking about, Dr. Cofield. We, if parents needed support, whether it was medication, groceries, you name it, we supported our families with some of those basic needs that they needed, and so we have spent right around $100,000 for our families up to date, and we are going to have I'm having another fundraiser next month to try to raise some more money to continue to do this very thing, and that is support our families with some of those basic needs of just getting money so they can feed their family, get medication, get my car fixed or whatever they need. Yeah.
That's tremendous. As we get ready to close, I want you to take the time to speak to just those who are out there on the front lines. I really felt your heart as you were talking about the teachers. You're a person who has served elementary, middle, and high schools. You're a person who was in the classroom. You've taught in difficult situations, and now you have an opportunity to lead. And we have somewhere between 100, 150,000 people listening to this show, and I know many of them are teachers. Many of them are educators. Many of them are parts of unions. I want you to take just the last few minutes just to share from your heart, just to encourage them in terms of what they're facing, what they're dealing with. You're in a charter district now, but you've been in the big boy districts before.
I've been in the beast. I absolutely have.
And so I want you to take the last few minutes just to share from your heart, just to encourage them as they're going through this time.
Yeah. I'll begin by just but it's saying that these are incredibly unprecedented times, and what you're feeling relative to being overwhelmed, underappreciated, and not knowing like what's next is very natural. And in my opinion, I think about the folks that are passing out Chromebooks, and the folks that are serving meals, and our teachers who are making sure that kids are getting out of bed and they're nourished still, and they're doing their lessons. And not only are you doing your lessons, but you are growing. You guys, in my opinion, just like the frontline workers at our hospitals, are the heroes. And you guys do this for the love of the work. It's not for the money. It's for the love of the work. And all I say is this right here, and why I have always done the work as well. We're going to get to the other side. And what I will say is take this thing one day at a time. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. And then take care of our children. But you come first. And I would not, and don't feel bad about taking care of yourself, because you can't do this work unless you're right and your family's right. And if you are right and your family is right, then you can do this work. And so I would implore upon you to continue to take care of you, take care of your family, and then, you can put the oxygen mask on our children after that.
I think about getting on that plane, and people, flight attendants always telling us, hey, if you're with somebody who needs assistance, put your mask on first, and then take care of the person who needs assistance. And I remember having a conversation with somebody, and they said, well, that's kind of selfish. Why wouldn't you put it on the person who needs assistance first? And I'm like, because if they need assistance, they probably can't help you. And if you help them and then you pass out, then they're going to be in trouble and you're going to be in trouble. And it's like, wow, I never thought about it like that. So I think you're absolutely right. Mr. Terence Johnson, thank you so much. CEO of Caliper Schools in the East Bay area of Northern California. Man, I appreciate you so much. Appreciate the investment that you make in educators and training leaders. I don't know if Earth has enough computers to register the number of lives that you touch directly and indirectly, but I know you touch my wife in a special way. She loves you to death, and I really, really appreciate the work that you've done and the work that you're doing now. And we're going to continue to pray for you as we walk through this very challenging time. And as you said, what has been is not, and what will be has not yet been created. We're just walking through this. Not a new normal, maybe just the next normal. And we're going to figure our way through this. But thank you so much for being with us, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Dr. Cofield. Appreciate it.
So the late Vernon John said, if you see a good fight, get in it. And I always add, if you don't see a good fight, start one. And this fight is kind of a different fight. This is not a fight of the pugnacious variety, but this is a fight for our spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being. And I want to take this opportunity to really encourage those teachers who are hanging in there. I will say this, there comes a point when the wheat and the chaff will be separated. And those who have not been teaching for the right reason are not going to be able to hang in here. Those who are teaching for the right reason, those who are teaching because they love children, are going to be hard pressed to hang in there. But I want you to know you can do it. And I appreciate Mr. Terence Johnson so much, because he really encouraged me to encourage you. And I want to do it not just on this show, but I want to do it as we move forward as well, to let you know that we will get through this. And I also want to follow up on our first series message in this series, effectively educating our children. Teachers, you are carrying the water. And so make sure that you take care of yourselves and demand, when necessary, demand the support and help that you need. Whether it's mental health services for yourself or your family, additional resources for your family members and for you, make sure you don't expend too much so that you have nothing left to give. Because if you're out of this system, then this system is not going to work. This is Dr. DZ Cofield. You're listening to Real World, Real Talk, signing off. Man, I hope you have a great day and have a great rest of the week. Until next time, take care. Peace.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real World, Real Talk. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes every week. Follow us via social media using the @RWRTDZ username on all platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To submit any comments, questions, sponsor opportunities, or future show suggestions, visit us online at rwrtdz.com or via email at info@rwrtdz.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've been inspired to be the change you want to see in the world today. Until next time, be real, keep it real, and stay real.